Okay, so thanks a lot, Aamir, for being part of this conversation on the alternate universe series, as we call it. And the reason why we call it the alternate universe is because so much is so different, right? That the rules of the game, as far as the existing universe are concerned, are not quite able to address all the questions and doubts and comments that everybody has. And truly, in our head, the reason why we call it alternate and stuff is, number one, it's a crisis at many, many levels, right? It's a human crisis, a health crisis. It's a crisis facing business. It's a crisis facing the economy as a whole. And almost appears to be like an existential kind of a crisis. That, right? Second part is, it's actually completely unprecedented, right? Nothing, absolutely nothing in our experience as professional managers or as leaders has quite prepared us to kind of handle this, right? So we can't go back to a time in our life and say, hey, I've done this before, I've handled this before. We all attended workshops on VUCA times. Well, guess what? VUCA times are here. So third part, because it's unprecedented, Aamir, is also that there's a little bit of what I call the dark tunnel. What's next? How do I predict what the future is going to look like? How do I manage my organization, its infrastructure, its fixed costs, its cash flows, its people issues, and all that kind of stuff? If I'm heading down a dark tunnel, not sure if there's a train coming at me on the other side or is there light at the end of the tunnel. So, and that makes it extremely relevant for senior folks like yourself to be here and kind of light a little bit of a torch in this dark tunnel and show us what the path ahead might look like. So anything you want to add to it as an opening comment, would love to hear from you. If this is your view of the reality or how else you think about it.
So I'd like to respond to your, this dark tunnel allegory, right? Very, very relevant, very interesting. It is a black swan event. And so you're right. I mean, this light show, I mean, कहते हैं कि सितारे डूब के करते हैं अनवारे शहर पैदा. Yeah, so what really means is that, so it's like allegorical that when the stars go down, that's when the beauty of dawn emerges, right? So possibly, it's like a, it's like a correction that the whole ecosystem will go through with this, right? And the fact is that it is not, it is not demand-led or it's not supply-led. It is more sort of, something which is very, very unusual that nobody sort of, had ever imagined. And that's why, one has to really, really get the act together and see as to how do we come out of it, right? So it's not a structural situation. It is a, it's like an accident, right?
Yes, absolutely. So that's why unusual times, right? And an unusual dialogue for us to be kind of engaged in. So come to the first theme, Aamir. As you look out, right, and you look out, 6 months, 18 months, whatever the time frame you think is realistic to kind of look out. What are the scenarios you're kind of thinking of as for the business?
When it comes to looking out, I think the whole, let's say the whole ecosystem, the whole world, all the governments, they are working towards trying to see as to how do they keep their economies afloat, right? So if you look into the future, I would have an optimistic view on this, and the reason for that is that the amount of money that is being pumped in the economies. So a U.S. government putting up 10% of the GDP, for example, $2 trillion in the economy, right?
Wow.
Japan, almost $1 trillion announced today. Same is the situation with Europe. So European Central Bank, as well as independent countries in Europe. So one will see, like the way we saw the quantitative easing happening post the banks, crash. Similarly, now we see that a huge amount of support by the government, so a lot of sovereign support being given to sort of, to get the economies moving. So while short term, it's about, managing the current situation and being able to handle, the current situation and see to it that, we all tide over these next few months. But in the meantime, there will be a lot of liquidity in the system, and which and again at the same time, what's happening is that, especially in the US and Europe and other countries, most of the liquidity is being given to companies with one caveat, that they have to keep the people. They can give them a furlough, right? But then they still have to be on the roll, so that the moment situation improves, they get back to work, which is very encouraging, right? So people technically not losing their jobs, they're being on furloughs. At the same time, financial support being given to companies to keep these people on the rolls, so that whenever the situation improves, at least these are people who are a part of the organized economy, and they go back hopefully to the buying and selling. And also, it will impact different industries differently, right? So certain industries which are, let's say, non-discretionary, they will be the first one to sort of, right now people are on subsistence level, but then their consumption starts, going up. Then of course the discretionary products, especially the products, for example, the way we are into jeans and denims, right? So that sort of, goes sort of, is lower down the sort of, let's say, priority list. But I definitely see a shift towards the value segment. I think people will be looking for more value for the money that they've been spending.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I foresee.
Mm-hmm. And therefore, businesses like yours, as you build your scenarios of how to emerge out of this,
right,
there will be certain bets that you will be taking and certain things you ought to be putting on the back burner. Is that your advice to businesses?
Absolutely. I would clearly sort of recommend that every business should consider how to be meaningful in the value segment, because that's where consumers will start looking for more and more value. That is what one sees happening. So how to see that you are one of the, let's say, in terms of cost, in terms of the product, you are relevant. How do you create innovation in those segments and be relevant to your consumer? That clearly one sees. And also, while as businesses, we tend to make, if we normally, we are continuously working on scenarios, right? Normally, we are continuously working, even in our regular business, we're working on scenarios. But right now, at least in the immediate term, Deepak, what I see is that beyond scenario, it is more about detailing, right? It's about, right now, the biggest focus for all of us is to see as to how to keep the fire burning, right? So how to keep the cash flows on, and which means that it has to be more about detailing among each and every order, each and every LC, each and every bank, each and every negotiation. So it's not about scenario building; it's micro. It's not about macro as of now. I think for the next few months, maybe one will have to live for the day and look at one's cash flows very, very closely, and which will mean that a lot of detailing. That's what I see.
One of the conversations I've been a part of, and just throwing that at you to check what your reaction is, that India as a country should emerge out of this stronger. And one of the reasons being that we have a strong domestic economy, right?
Sure.
And therefore, the extent to which we are interconnected from both a supply chain as well as from a market standpoint is lesser than perhaps some other countries, right? So if 35% of our GDP was dependent upon exports, it would be a different level of problem. But considering the fact that we have a strong domestic market, our recovery should be faster. What's your view on that? Is that just nationalism of a certain kind, or is there some realism kind of built into that?
No, I think what you're saying is very, very valid, and because we're seeing it, right? I mean, in our business model, we're seeing it that compared to many of our competing, let's say, countries, right, our competition in other countries, they're finding it extremely difficult, and they even finding the road to recovery extremely difficult, even when we have this conversation with them, because as you so rightly said, that their business model is completely skewed towards exports. And we in India definitely have this huge advantage where there's a large domestic market and then there's an export market. So you are able to hedge your business, right? So your business is primarily a de-risk model. Having said that, I think the domestic market in India is still largely through the small and medium enterprises. So in the supply chain, there's a big dependence on SMEs, right? And that's where one has to see as to how will they come out of this situation, because SMEs are going through a lot of
Tension,
a
challenge.
lot of stress and aggravation, and they have workers who have gone. I mean, like I think in this case, even as a prescription, like the governments in other countries have given payroll support. I think in the next tranches, because Indian government possibly, I mean, at least that's the conversation in the newspapers and in the media that one sees. The Indian government is basically looking at some more support to the industry going forward, and a support in the form of payroll support where employers are encouraged to sort of retain the workforce with them will definitely help a quicker recovery.
What about globalization? What's your take on we spent the last 100 years kind of connecting ourselves with everything and one little village and stuff. So, right? And how has that shaken?
So I think globalization is about, it has happened very naturally, right? I mean, so globalization is way bigger. This is what we're seeing is a temporary, transient situation that the world will come out of, right? Globalization has happened on its own merit. Over a period of time, people have realized that there are geographies that specialize in certain, either raw material or specialize in certain skills or specialize in certain sort of, certain methods. And on it's like evolution, right? It's like evolution that things have evolved, basis the requirement, basis the ecosystem. But the fact is that globalization is too powerful and too logical to go away, right? That's what I feel.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of. So, though there have been some fears about this whole thing and the kind of disruption it has caused, but I hear you. I hear you. Let's talk about the second theme quickly, and that's about magically all this is behind us, and there is a day, hypothetically, there's a day when the CEO and the senior leadership team are back at work, and you're all kind of together around the conference room, and the projector is working, and you're presenting different things. So, what's the priority? And what's your advice to the CEO? Has stuff changed? Are there programs and things that you would put into the dustbin and say, we'll take care of them later, guys. This is what we need to solve for now. What's that advice to the CEO?
Deepak, कहते हैं कि कुछ तो होते हैं इश्क में जुनून के आसार और कुछ लोग भी दीवाना बना देते हैं. Right? So there is a reality, there is a problem, right? And it's a big problem, right? But we have to see it in context, right? I mean, we just can't go absolutely berserk and crazy about it, right? So it's very, very important to contextualize the problem that we have. And to me, I don't think because a certain government says a date, right? Because a date has been planned, that doesn't mean that life is going to change on that date, right? So I mean, for us, and I'm speaking for any business for that matter, I think the day zero started long time back, right? So what we're trying to do is that even as we speak, so first and foremost, I mean, the biggest challenge for me was to, with my team, to sort of drive this point home that this is work from home, it's not a holiday, right? So it's
you faced that, did you?
It's right, really, really work from home, right? So that means we have been continuously sort of, working, and whether we start on the 15th or it's a partial start or it gets delayed, I don't think it's going to make any difference. As far as organizations are concerned, we have to continue, doing this micro detailing and rolling out those plans, working on those plans. And what is going to happen is that our customers, the whole supply chain, right? So we have customers, we've got vendors, we've got raw material suppliers. Now they will work on their own sort of exigencies or on their own plans. So my opening on the 15th say will not drive much good if my customer doesn't open on the 15th, right? So as CEOs or as operating people, Deepak, I think it's very important that we continue, the work that we're doing irrespective of that day zero. And, we try and see that whatever work we need to do to get the cash flows to be able to pay our, payables. That is what we need to focus on, and that should keep happening independent of that day zero.
That's great stuff. Let's come to the final theme of this: people and culture.
Right.
Lots which is being said about it, right? And to some extent, this is a people crisis.
Absolutely.
The market didn't give up on you and stuff of that kind, right?
Absolutely.
At the end of the day, I mean, the simple way of describing this is people are unable to get back to work, as we talked about, right? So both the activity of production as well as consumption,
right.
None of that can happen, whether it's products or it's services. It doesn't really
right.
matter.
Right.
So as you look at no, don't worry.
I'm having my cup of coffee. My son is here, so that's the luxury, that we have this strong cup of coffee in the afternoon, right?
Oh, I'm holding you from that, am I?
No, not at all. Not at all.
So what about that? And I hear lots of stuff. There are people, governments, like you said, have rightly been very concerned about that and gone out, and lots of employers have taken the high road and said, no, we're not going to cut jobs, we're not going to do this. By the way, our recruitment pipeline continues. We might actually need more people, and so on and so forth. We're not going to cut salaries. Salaries are, in fact, by the way, we're going to increase salaries in certain areas, right? And what's your advice to the head of HR at this point in time?
Again, to be honest, HR has got a very tough job. I think the most difficult job, in the current situation is with HR. And there are two parts to it. One is DNA of an organization is difficult to change, right? So, because DNA by definition is DNA, right? It is embedded in your genes, right?
Yep.
So I'll be lying if I say that, look, organizations and corporations will remain they'll keep their purse strings open and, keep supporting people. The fact is that organizations are responsible to the stakeholders, and they have a responsibility towards the stakeholders. So whatever it really means to stay afloat and to create value for stakeholders, that is a classic thought process. They have to do that. So the fact is that organizations, and depending upon which industry one is in, as you rightly said, there will be, for example, if you are in e-commerce and on delivery support, business, then you would be hiring people, right? And if you are into manufacturing, where you don't see demand for the next 6 months, you'll have to let go of people. So depending upon the industry, the dynamics will be different. Speaking on behalf of a manufacturing industry, of course, we are in a situation where we manufacture and we have to consolidate our businesses. We have to see that, there'll be a lot of assets that will be idling. So we'll have to see as to how to take care of our fixed costs, which might mean that, some people going away, which might mean that some people being, given some support. So HR, I think, being able to strike a fine balance between, the imperative of the organization, which is in case we have to separate few people, then that's, that has to be done. There's no choice, right? At the same time, how you can do it in the most humane manner with the greatest amount of empathy and the greatest amount of, let's say, support to them, and without their esteem getting hurt and a lot of information being shared with them. I think that striking that fine balance, and I would assume that this whole, HR, I think what I've seen is that it's a very tough job, but benevolence in HR always pays. I have seen this. If one is benevolent in HR, and I'm not seeing that you become a charity organization. Right? I'm not saying that at all, right? But whatever decisions you're taking, if there's some amount of benevolence in those decisions, it definitely goes a long way
forward. Thank you so much, Aamir. There's a bundle of insights over there. And thank you so much. I really look forward to catching up with you on the other side of this, when we are all able to kind of travel and kind of meet each other and once again shake hand or do namaste, whatever.
Absolutely.
I look forward to catching up with you on this side. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks a lot.
We appreciate it.
Likewise, it's always a pleasure talking to you, and always I get great insights from you. Thanks a lot, and wish you all the best. Stay safe.
You too. Stay safe. Thank you.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.